Across the galaxy, there exists a universal truth that every species learns the hard way: never underestimate the bond between humans and creatures they consider family. The Zephyrians discovered this when they made the mistake of abandoning one of their own battle hounds to die on a desolate moon. They thought they were disposing of a failed weapon. Instead, they had just given humanity a reason to show the galaxy what happens when someone hurts something a human decides to protect. What they didn't know was that this particular battlehound would become the catalyst for the most unexpected alliance in galactic history, and that the humans who found her wouldn't just save her life, they would help her discover what it truly means to be more than just a weapon of war. The mining shuttle Terra's Dream descended through the thin atmosphere of Kepler 442c, its hull groaning under the stress of atmospheric entry. Captain Sarah Chin gripped her command chair as the vessel shuddered, fighting against the moon's weak gravitational pull and the electromagnetic interference that had been plaguing their navigation systems for the past 3 hours. "Still getting those strange energy readings from Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez from his position at the sensor array. His fingers danced across the holographic display, trying to isolate the source of the mysterious signals they detected from orbit. "Could be mineral deposits," suggested Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's xenobiologist, though her voice carried uncertainty. "Some rare earth elements can produce unusual electromagnetic signatures." Chen frowned, studying the data streaming across her personal display. In her 15 years of deep space mining operations, she'd learned to trust her instincts, and, right now, those instincts were telling her that whatever was generating those readings wasn't geological in nature. The patterns were too regular, too purposeful. "Take us down to 500 meters above the surface," she ordered. "I want a full spectrum scan of that area before we commit to a landing." The shuttle's engines whined as they adjusted course, sweeping across the barren landscape below. Kepler 442c was supposed to be uninhabited, a dead rock orbiting a gas giant in the Tau Ceti system. The mining rights had been cheap precisely because preliminary surveys had shown nothing of value beyond basic iron ore and silicon deposits. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement, "you're going to want to see this." Chen unbuckled herself and moved to his station, peering over his shoulder at the enhanced sensor readings. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The energy signature wasn't coming from mineral deposits at all. It was biological, complex, and fading fast. "There's something alive down there," Rodriguez whispered. "That's impossible," Dr. Vasquez said, joining them at the sensor station. "The atmospheric composition is barely breathable, surface temperature hovers around freezing, and there's no evidence of any ecosystem that could support complex life." But the readings were undeniable. Somewhere in the rocky outcropping below, a large organism was struggling to maintain its life functions. The energy signature was erratic, suggesting severe trauma or illness. Could it be an indigenous species that the original survey missed? Chen asked. Vasquez shook her head. "The genetic markers are all wrong. This organism isn't native to this moon. Someone or something brought it here." The implications hung heavy in the air. If an alien species was using Kepler 442c as some kind of dumping ground or prison, the mining operation would have to be suspended while they contacted the Galactic Council. But, first, they needed to determine what exactly they were dealing with. "Take us down for a closer look," Chen ordered. "Full environmental suits, and keep the engines hot for a quick departure if necessary." The shuttle touched down on a flat expanse of red rock, its landing struts finding purchase on the ancient volcanic stone. Through the viewports, the crew could see the source of the energy readings, a dark cave mouth carved into the side of a low cliff, surrounded by what appeared to be the wreckage of some kind of spacecraft. "That's definitely not human technology," Rodriguez observed, studying the twisted metal fragments through his binoculars. The debris showed signs of advanced metallurgy and energy weapon damage. Scorch marks decorated the cliff face, and the entire area had the look of a battlefield rather than a crash site. Someone had fought here, and lost. As the 3 crew members suited up for EVA, Chen found herself wondering about the ethics of their situation. Mining operations were supposed to be simple: find valuable minerals, extract them, and move on. They weren't equipped or trained for first contact scenarios or rescue missions. "Dr. Vasquez, what are the odds that whatever's in that cave is hostile?" she asked as they cycled through the airlock. "Unknown," the xenobiologist replied honestly. "The energy patterns suggest it's badly injured and possibly dying. Wounded animals can be unpredictable, but it may be too weak to pose a real threat." They approached the cave mouth cautiously, their suit lights piercing the darkness within. The smell that greeted them even through their environmental filters was unmistakable: blood, infection, and the metallic tang of advanced medical equipment running on failing power cells. The cave extended deeper than their lights could penetrate, but they didn't have to go far to find the source of the energy readings. In a natural chamber about 20 meters from the entrance, they discovered what could only be described as a makeshift medical bay. Advanced life support equipment lined the walls, connected by thick cables to a central pod that hummed with barely contained energy. Most of the machinery bore the same design aesthetic as the wreckage outside, but some pieces looked jury-rigged, as if someone had been forced to improvise repairs with whatever materials they could find. And, in the center of it all, suspended in a translucent medical pod, was the most magnificent and terrifying creature any of them had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a large earth horse, but built like a predator. Its body was covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating, a deep blue-black that seemed to absorb light. 6 powerful limbs ended in retractable claws that could have easily torn through starship hull plating. Its head was elongated and elegant, with features that suggested both intelligence and devastating hunting capability. But what struck them most was how still it lay. The creature's breathing was shallow and irregular, and angry red wounds covered its flanks where the armor plating had been torn away. One of its limbs hung at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, and a network of medical tubes and monitoring wires connected it to the life support systems. "My God," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "It's beautiful." Chen had to agree. Despite its obvious predatory design, there was something undeniably noble about the creature. Even unconscious and badly injured, it radiated a sense of dignity and strength that commanded respect. "Look at the medical equipment," Rodriguez pointed out. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to keep this thing alive. This isn't a prison or execution site. This is a hospital." They spent several minutes examining the scene, taking readings and recording everything they could. The medical equipment was clearly designed for the creature's specific physiology, suggesting its creators had intimate knowledge of its biology. But many of the machines were failing, their power cells nearly depleted, and the creature's vital signs were growing weaker by the hour. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said quietly, "whoever built this medical facility is gone. There's no evidence of recent activity except for the automated systems. I think this creature has been abandoned here to die." The words hit Chen like a physical blow. In all her years exploring the galaxy, she'd encountered many different alien species and cultures. Some were peaceful, others warlike, but she'd never before seen evidence of such casual cruelty. To abandon a wounded creature in this way, regardless of species, struck her as fundamentally wrong. "Can we help it?" she asked. Vasquez was already running detailed scans with her portable equipment. "The physiology is unlike anything in our databases, but the basic life support requirements seem similar to many species we're familiar with. The main problem is that these machines are failing, and I don't think we can repair them with our current resources." "What about bringing it aboard the ship?" "Dangerous," Rodriguez interjected. "We don't know anything about its psychology or behavior. For all we know, it could be programmed to attack humans on sight." Shen studied the creature more carefully, noting the care with which someone had positioned it in the medical pod, the gentle way the support systems cradled its wounded body. Everything about the setup suggested that whoever had brought it here cared deeply about its welfare. "Look at the wounds," she said finally. "Those aren't from an accident or natural causes. This creature was injured in battle, probably defending something or someone. And whoever brought it here risked a lot to give it medical care." As if responding to her words, the creature's breathing suddenly became more labored, and several of the medical monitors began flashing warning signals. The life support systems were failing faster than anticipated. "We need to make a decision now," Dr. Vasquez said urgently. "If we're going to try to help, we need to act immediately." Chen looked around at her crew, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were miners, not soldiers or diplomats. But they were also human beings, and leaving a wounded creature to die when they might be able to help felt like a betrayal of everything that made humanity worth preserving. "Rodriguez, get back to the ship and prepare the cargo bay for medical operations. Clear out everything we don't need and set up the emergency medical equipment. Vasquez, I need you to figure out how to safely transport this creature without killing it in the process." "And if it wakes up hostile?" Rodriguez asked. Chen checked her sidearm and the emergency restraint systems on her utility belt. Then, we deal with that problem when we come to it. But, I'm not leaving it here to die. As Rodriguez headed back to the ship, Chen and Dr. Vasquez began the delicate process of disconnecting the creature from the alien medical equipment and preparing it for transport. The work was complicated by their unfamiliarity with the technology and the need to maintain the creature's life functions during the transition. "These neural connectors are fascinating," Vasquez murmured as she carefully removed a network of fiber optic cables from the creature's skull. "They're not just monitoring brain activity, they're actually interfacing with higher cognitive functions. This isn't just medical equipment, it's some kind of communication system." Communication with whom? Unknown. But, the data patterns suggest the creature has been receiving regular information updates, almost like news feeds or status reports. Someone has been keeping it informed about external events. The implications were troubling. If the creature had been conscious and aware during its time in the medical facility, then it knew it had been abandoned. The psychological trauma might be even more severe than the physical injuries. Working together, they managed to disconnect the creature from the alien systems and transfer it to a makeshift stretcher constructed from their emergency shelter materials. The creature remained unconscious throughout the process, but its vital signs seemed to stabilize once they began supporting it with their own medical equipment. The journey back to the shuttle was nerve-wracking. The creature was far heavier than it looked, and its armored skin made it difficult to get a secure grip. But they managed to load it into the cargo bay, where Rodriguez had prepared a basic medical facility using their ship's emergency supplies. "I've contacted the nearest human medical facility," Rodriguez reported as they secured the creature for transport. Dr. Sarah Kim at the Centauri Research Station is standing by to consult on xenobiology cases, but she says we're flying blind until we know more about the creature's physiology. As the Terra's Dream lifted off from Kepler 442c, Chen found herself staring at their unexpected passenger. The creature looked even more impressive under the ship's medical lights, its armor plating revealing intricate patterns and colorations that suggested both natural evolution and deliberate modification. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez called from her position at the medical monitoring station, "I'm detecting some unusual brain activity. The sedation is wearing off faster than expected." Chen moved to the monitoring station, watching the neural activity patterns dancing across the screen. The readings were complex and organized, suggesting high intelligence and active dream states. "How long before it wakes up?" "At this rate, maybe 6 hours. "But, Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting embedded technology in its neural system. Cybernetic implants of some kind, integrated so seamlessly with the biological components that they're almost invisible." The revelation added another layer of complexity to their situation. This wasn't just an alien creature, it was a cybernetically enhanced being, possibly designed for specific purposes they couldn't begin to guess at. Could those implants be dangerous to us? I don't think so. They seem focused on enhancing the creature's natural capabilities rather than adding new ones. But, Captain, there's something else. The implants are designed to interface with external communication systems. I think this creature is meant to work as part of a team. Chen nodded slowly, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. The battlefield they'd found, the advanced medical facility, the communication equipment, it all pointed to a military operation gone wrong. But, whose military, and why had they abandoned one of their own? As the shuttle accelerated toward the nearest human station, Chen made a mental note to research recent galactic conflicts. Somewhere out there, a species had developed creatures like this one as weapons of war. And if they were willing to abandon their own wounded, humanity needed to know what they might be dealing with. But, first, they had a patient to save. And, despite all the unknowns and potential dangers, Chen found herself hoping they could give this magnificent creature a second chance at life. Something about its dignity even in unconsciousness reminded her of why she'd always believed humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or military might, but in their willingness to help those who couldn't help themselves. The journey to Centauri Research Station would take 18 hours. 18 hours to keep their patient alive, 18 hours to prepare for whatever happened when it woke up, and 18 hours to figure out what they were going to do with a cybernetically enhanced alien battle creature that someone had tried to throw away. As Chen settled into her command chair for the long flight ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled into something much larger than a simple rescue mission. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to care about something that everyone else had given up on. And, somewhere in the medical bay behind her, the Battlehound's dreams were filled with memories of loss, abandonment, and the faint hope that perhaps, finally, someone had come to help. The Centauri research station hung like a brilliant star against the cosmic backdrop, its rotating sections generating artificial gravity for the thousands of researchers, medical personnel, and support staff who called it home. As the Terra's Dream approached the massive facility, Captain Chen couldn't help but feel relief at seeing the distinctive blue and white hall markings that identified it as a human installation. Dr. Sarah Kim was waiting for them at Docking Bay 7, accompanied by a full xenobiology team and enough medical equipment to outfit a small hospital. Chen had worked with Kim before during a mining accident on Proxima B, and she knew the doctor's reputation for handling impossible cases with calm professionalism. "Sarah, thank you for agreeing to help with this," Chen said as they transferred the still unconscious creature to the station's specialized xenobiology medical bay. "Are you kidding?" Kim replied, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "This is the most interesting case I've seen in 5 years. The preliminary data you sent is fascinating. I've never seen cybernetic integration this sophisticated in a non-humanoid species." The medical bay was a marvel of human engineering, designed to accommodate a wide variety of alien physiologies. Adjustable examination tables, modular life support systems, and diagnostic equipment that could adapt to different biochemistries on the fly. If anyone could help their patient, it would be here. As Kim's team began their examination, Chen found herself studying the creature more closely than she'd been able to during the rescue. Under the bright medical lights, she could see details that had been hidden before. The armor plating wasn't uniform, it showed signs of growth and adaptation, suggesting the creature had developed it over time rather than being born with it. The cybernetic implants were works of art, seamlessly integrated with the biological systems in ways that human technology couldn't yet match. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez called from across the room, "you need to see this." Chen joined her at a wall-mounted display showing the creature's neural activity. The patterns were becoming increasingly complex as the sedation wore off, and there was something almost familiar about the rhythms. "It's dreaming," Vasquez explained. "But not random dream patterns. These look organized, like it's actively processing memories or information." Kim looked up from her examination. The cybernetic implants include what appears to be a memory storage and processing system. It's possible the creature is reviewing stored data while unconscious, either as part of a healing process or in preparation for awakening. "Any idea when it might wake up?" "Based on the metabolic readings, I'd estimate another 2 hours. "But, Sarah, there's something else." The injuries this creature sustained weren't just from weapons fire. Someone performed surgery on it, removing something from its neural system. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of something?" "I can't be sure without more detailed scans, but there are surgical scars around the base of the skull that suggest someone removed a significant piece of cybernetic hardware. Whatever it was integrated deep enough into the brain that removing it would have been extremely traumatic." "A control device?" Rodriguez suggested. He'd been quietly observing from the corner, but the implications were too disturbing to ignore. Kim nodded grimly. "That's my best guess. Someone performed neurosurgery to remove what was probably a behavioral control implant. The good news is that whoever did it clearly knew what they were doing. The surgery was precise and professional. But the trauma of the operation, combined with the battle wounds, nearly killed it. The picture that was emerging was increasingly disturbing. The creature had been created or modified as some kind of living weapon, controlled through cybernetic implants. Someone had fought to free it from that control, performing dangerous surgery in the middle of what appeared to be a combat situation. And then, they'd hidden it away on a dead moon, hoping it would survive long enough to heal. "Dr. Kim," Chen said slowly, "in your professional opinion, is this creature dangerous?" Kim considered the question carefully. Any predator of this size and capability is potentially dangerous, especially one that's been traumatized. But look at the neural patterns. There's no sign of artificial behavioral conditioning or programmed aggression. If anything, the brain scans suggest a highly intelligent being capable of complex reasoning and emotional responses. Emotions? The limbic system analogs are highly developed. This creature is capable of forming emotional bonds, experiencing fear, affection, loyalty. It's not just a weapon, it's a person. The word hung in the air like a challenge. A person. Not just an alien, not just a creature, but an individual with thoughts and feelings and the right to make its own choices about its life. As if responding to their conversation, the neural activity monitors began showing increased brain function. The creature was waking up. Everyone needs to stay calm, Kim warned. It's going to be confused and, possibly frightened. We don't know how it will react to seeing humans for the first time. Chen checked that her sidearm was accessible but kept her hands visible and non-threatening. Around the room, the medical staff took similar precautions, balancing readiness with the desire not to appear hostile. The creature's eyes opened slowly, revealing irises of deep violet that seemed to glow with their own inner light. For a moment, it simply lay still, taking in its surroundings with what appeared to be careful assessment. Then, its gaze fixed on Chen, and she felt as if she was being evaluated by an intelligence far older and more experienced than her own. When it tried to speak, the sound that emerged was like nothing any of them had ever heard. It was musical and complex, with harmonic overtones that seemed to resonate through their bones. The universal translator systems in the room immediately began analyzing the sounds, but it would take time to establish communication protocols. It's trying to communicate, Dr. Vasquez observed, monitoring the translation systems. The creature seemed to realize that its words weren't being understood. It paused, then tilted its head in a gesture that was somehow universally recognizable as curiosity. When it spoke again, the sounds were different, simpler, as if it was deliberately trying to make itself understood. The translation matrix is beginning to form patterns, the computer announced in its neutral voice. Estimated time to basic communication, 15 minutes. During those 15 minutes, Chen found herself engaged in the most unusual conversation of her life. Using gestures, simple sounds, and careful movements, she and the creature began to establish basic communication. It was clearly intelligent and seemed to understand that they had rescued it from the medical facility. When the translation system finally came online, the creature's first words were simple and direct. "Why did you help me?" Chen considered her answer carefully. "Because you needed help, and we could provide it." The creature's violet eyes studied her face for a long moment. "Your species is unknown to me. I am called Caliph of the Third Talon, formerly of the Zephyrian Combined Fleet. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Terra's Dream. This is Dr. Kim and Dr. Vasquez." "Humans," Caliph repeated the word as if tasting it. "I have heard whispers of your species. You are new to this region of space." "Relatively new, yes. We found you on Kepler 442c, badly injured and alone." "Who did this to you?" Caliph's expression grew pained, and Chen could see the memories were difficult. "My own people. The Zephyrians created me to be a weapon in their wars. When I chose to think for myself rather than simply obey, they declared me defective and sentenced me to termination." "But someone helped you escape?" "Dr. Zenth Coral, my handler and the closest thing I had to a friend. She removed the control implants and helped me reach the medical facility. She said if I could survive until the wounds healed, I might have a chance at freedom." Caliph's voice carried deep sadness. "I do not know if she survived the escape." Chen felt a surge of anger at the casual cruelty of it all. To create a sentient being and, then, attempt to destroy it simply for developing independence was unconscionable. "You're safe now," she said firmly. "The Zephyrians have no authority in human space." Caliph raised its head, studying Chen with new interest. "You would offer sanctuary to one of their escaped weapons?" "We don't see weapons when we look at you. We see someone who was hurt and needed help." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "Caliph, I need to ask about your injuries. Are you experiencing any pain? How are you feeling?" "Pain, yes, but manageable. The surgeries were successful, though I will carry the scars always." "But, Dr. Kim, I must know, what are your intentions for me? Am I a prisoner now, or a patient?" "You're a patient who's free to leave whenever you choose," Kim replied without hesitation. "Though I'd recommend staying until we're certain your injuries have healed properly." Caliph looked genuinely surprised by this. "Free to leave? Even though I am an unknown alien with combat capabilities?" "Even though," Chen confirmed. "That's how humans operate. We believe in individual freedom and the right of all sapient beings to determine their own destiny. This is unexpected. In my experience, strength is used to dominate the weak. Your species appears to operate by different principles." Rodriguez, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. If you don't mind me asking, what were you designed to do? What kind of warfare were you created for? Caliph considered whether to answer, then seemed to decide that honesty was warranted. I am what you might call a battle hound. I was designed for deep reconnaissance, sabotage, and, when necessary, frontline combat. My cybernetic enhancements allow me to interface with various technological systems, gather intelligence, and coordinate with other military units. I am capable of surviving in hostile environments and eliminating targets with extreme efficiency. The medical bay fell silent as everyone processed this information. They were dealing with a being specifically designed to be a living weapon, enhanced to be the perfect soldier. But, you chose not to be that anymore, Chen observed. I chose to think for myself rather than simply follow orders without question. The Zephyrians could not tolerate that independence. They prefer their weapons to be mindless. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. What made you change? What made you start questioning orders? Calitha's expression grew distant. There was a mission on a civilian station. The target was a research facility developing medical technology. My orders were to eliminate all personnel to prevent the technology from being developed. But, when I arrived, I found that the research was focused on treating childhood diseases. The creature paused, clearly reliving difficult memories. There were younglings there, sick children being treated with experimental therapies. My orders required me to kill them all. But, I could not reconcile the logic of destroying those who were working to save innocent lives. I chose to complete the mission by disabling the facility's defenses instead of killing the staff, allowing them to evacuate. And, that was considered defection? That was considered the beginning of my malfunction. The control implants were designed to prevent exactly that kind of independent decision-making. When they failed to override my choice, I was recalled for termination and replacement. Chen found herself feeling a deep respect for this being who had chosen compassion over obedience, even knowing the cost. You made the right choice. Did I? Dr. Coral paid with her life for helping me escape. The facility I spared was probably destroyed anyway once they realized I had malfunctioned. What did my defiance actually accomplish? It proved that you're more than what they tried to make you, Kim said firmly. You proved that consciousness and free will can't be controlled forever, no matter how sophisticated the technology. Caliph looked around the room at the faces of the humans who had rescued it, seeing genuine acceptance and respect rather than fear or suspicion. It was an experience unlike anything in its previous existence. What happens now? It asked. Chen smiled. That's up to you. You're free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Though if you're interested, we could use someone with your skills on our mining crew. Deep space work often involves dangerous situations where someone with your capabilities would be invaluable. You would trust me aboard your ship? You've already proven your character by the choices you made. Trust has to start somewhere. Caliph was quiet for several minutes, processing this offer. Finally, it spoke. I have never had the opportunity to choose my own path before. The concept of freedom is still difficult for me to understand. Would it be possible to try working with your crew temporarily, to see if this arrangement benefits all parties? Absolutely. No pressure, no permanent commitments. Just a chance to see what life is like when you're making your own decisions. As the medical examination continued, Chen found herself marveling at the unexpected turn her mining mission had taken. They'd set out to extract minerals from a dead moon and, instead, found themselves giving a new lease on life to a being that had been thrown away by its own creators. But, more than that, she sensed they'd gained something valuable as well. Calitha's knowledge of galactic politics and military technology could be invaluable as humanity continued to expand into space. And its unique perspective on freedom and choice might help them navigate the complex relationships with other species they would inevitably encounter. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said quietly, drawing her aside, I've been analyzing the technological components in Calitha's cybernetic system. The integration techniques are at least 50 years ahead of anything humans have developed. If we could study these systems with Calitha's permission, the medical applications alone could revolutionize our understanding of bioengineering. Ask Caliph directly, Chen replied. It's their body and their choice whether to share that information. When Vasquez posed the question, Caliph considered it carefully. I would be willing to share technical information that could benefit medical applications, provided it cannot be used to create more weapons like me. "We're not interested in creating weapons," Kim assured it. "But the neural interface technology could help humans with spinal injuries or degenerative neurological conditions. Then, I will help however I can. It seems fitting that technology designed for destruction might instead be used for healing." As the day progressed, Chen began to see how well Caliph might fit into their crew. Despite its fearsome appearance and combat capabilities, the being displayed remarkable gentleness and consideration for the humans around it. It was quick to learn human social customs and seemed genuinely interested in understanding their culture and values. But Chen also recognized that Caliph would need time to adjust to freedom after a lifetime of controlled existence. The concept of making choices without immediate consequences was clearly foreign, and she could see the being hesitating before expressing preferences or opinions. "Caliph," she said during a quiet moment, "you don't have to be perfect or grateful. You're allowed to have bad days, to make mistakes, to be angry about what was done to you. Freedom includes the right to not always be pleasant or accommodating." Caliph looked puzzled. "I do not understand. Why would you tell me it is acceptable to be difficult?" "Because that's what it means to be a real person instead of a weapon. Real people have complex emotions and reactions. If you're always trying to be the perfect crew member, you're still letting someone else control your behavior." It was a concept that would take time for Caliph to fully grasp, but Chen could see the beginning of understanding in those violet eyes. For the first time in its existence, this magnificent being was being given permission to simply be itself, without conditions or expectations. As the Terra's dream prepared for departure, Chen felt a sense of anticipation about the journey ahead. They were returning to space with more than they'd planned to find, and she had the feeling that Caliph's presence would change all of their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The battle hound was about to discover what it meant to have a family. 3 months had passed since Caliph joined the crew of the Terra's dream, and the transformation had been remarkable to witness. The being that had once been a weapon of war was slowly learning what it meant to be part of a family, though the process wasn't without its challenges. Captain Chen watched from the observation deck as Caliph worked alongside Rodriguez in the main cargo bay, helping to install new mining equipment. The alien's natural strength and precise movements made the work go faster than it ever had with just the human crew, but, more importantly, Chen could see genuine contentment in Caliph's posture as it focused on the task. "The integration has exceeded all my expectations," Dr. Vasquez said, joining Chen at the viewing port. "Caliph's psychological profile shows continued improvement in emotional stability and social adaptation." "It's more than that," Chen replied. "Look at how Rodriguez interacts with Caliph now compared to 3 months ago." Below them, the two were engaged in animated discussion about the proper torque settings for the equipment bolts. Rodriguez was gesturing emphatically, and Caliph's head was tilted in the characteristic way that indicated amusement. The fear and uncertainty that had marked their early interactions had been replaced by genuine camaraderie. The transformation hadn't been immediate or easy. In the first weeks, Caliph had struggled with the concept of making choices without seeking permission or approval. The being would ask for authorization to perform basic tasks like selecting meals or choosing rest periods, clearly conditioned to expect that every decision would be made by someone else. Chen had made it a point to consistently redirect those requests. "What do you want to eat?" rather than "what should I eat?" had become a common refrain. Gradually, Caliph had begun to express preferences, then opinions, and eventually even disagreements with crew decisions. The first time Caliph had contradicted Chen's assessment of a mining site's safety, pointing out geological instability that the human sensors had missed, it had been a milestone moment. The being had offered its opinion hesitantly, clearly prepared to be overruled or punished for speaking up. Instead, Chen had listened, investigated, and discovered that Caliph was absolutely correct. The site would have been dangerous to work. "You saved us from a potentially fatal cave-in," Chen had told Caliph afterward. "Your expertise and willingness to speak up protected the entire crew." The concept that its independent thinking was valued rather than punished had been revolutionary for Caliph. From that point forward, the being had become more confident in offering suggestions and observations, gradually taking on the role of the ship's safety officer in addition to its other duties. But the most significant change had been in Caliph's relationship with human emotions and customs. The being had been fascinated by the crew's informal social interactions, studying their humor, their celebrations of personal milestones, and their casual expressions of affection and friendship. "Dr. Chen," Caliph had asked one day during Rodriguez's birthday celebration, "why do humans mark the anniversary of each individual's birth with group festivities? It's a way of showing that we value each person's existence, Chen had explained. We celebrate the fact that they're part of our lives. Even though they contributed nothing significant to deserve recognition? Existing is significant enough. We don't have to earn the right to be celebrated. The conversation had led to the discovery that Caliph had no knowledge of its own creation date or any concept of personal holidays. The crew had spontaneously decided to establish an Adoption Day celebration, marking the anniversary of when Caliph had first joined their family. The word family had taken on special meaning for Caliph. The being had been created in a laboratory and raised in military facilities where emotional bonds were actively discouraged. The idea that individuals could care for each other without formal obligations or strategic advantages was foreign but deeply appealing. Chen's communicator chirped, interrupting her observations. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Centauri Station," came the voice of the ship's AI. "It's marked urgent and classified." Chen made her way to the communication center, wondering what could warrant such a high-security message. When Dr. Kim's face appeared on the screen, her expression was grim and worried. "Sarah, I'm afraid I have disturbing news. We've been contacted by representatives of the Zephyrian Empire. They're claiming that you're harboring stolen military property and demanding Caliph's immediate return." Chen felt ice form in her stomach. "On what authority?" "They're citing interstellar laws regarding military assets and claiming that Caliph is classified technology that was unlawfully removed from their territory. They're threatening to involve the Galactic Council if we don't comply. Caliph isn't property. It's a sentient being that requested asylum." "I agree completely, but the Zephyrians are arguing that Caliph was created by them using their resources and technology, making it their legal property regardless of its sentience level. They're prepared to file formal extradition requests." Chen closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the situation. She'd known this moment might come, but she'd hoped they'd have more time to establish Caliph's legal status as a free individual. "What are our options?" "Limited," Kim admitted. "The Galactic Council has been reluctant to rule on the legal status of artificially created beings. There's precedent for treating them as property rather than persons, especially when they're designed for military purposes. That's barbaric." "Yes, but it's also the current state of galactic law. However, there might be another option. If Caliph could prove its value to the galactic community in a non-military capacity, it might be possible to argue for independent status based on demonstrated citizenship rather than creation circumstances." Chen nodded slowly, understanding the implication. Caliph would need to prove that it was more than just a weapon, that it had become a contributing member of society with its own rights and responsibilities. "How long do we have?" "The Zephyrians have given us 2 weeks to respond to their demands. After that, they're threatening to escalate to formal legal proceedings." After ending the communication, Chen called an all-hands meeting in the ship's common area. The crew gathered quickly, sensing from her expression that something serious had happened. "I need to share some difficult news with all of you," she began and then explained the situation with the Zephyrian demands. Caliph listened in silence, its expression becoming increasingly still as the implications became clear. When Chen finished speaking, the being spoke quietly. "I should return to them. I will not allow you to suffer consequences for helping me." "Absolutely not," Rodriguez said immediately. "You're part of this crew. We don't abandon family." "Marcus is right," Dr. Vasquez added. "We'll find another way to handle this." Caliph looked around at the faces of the humans who had become its family, seeing determination and loyalty rather than the fear or calculation it had expected. "You would risk legal complications to protect me? Even though doing so offers you no strategic advantage?" "That's what family does," Chen said simply. "We protect each other." The concept still amazed Caliph, even after months of experiencing it firsthand. In Zephyrian culture, relationships were based on utility and hierarchy. The idea that individuals would take personal risks for someone else's benefit without expecting compensation was revolutionary. "Then, what do we do?" Caliph asked. Chen had been thinking about Dr. Kim's suggestion regarding proof of citizenship. "We document everything you've contributed to our operations. Your safety recommendations have prevented 3 potential accidents. Your geological analysis has helped us locate mineral deposits that our standard equipment missed. Your technical expertise has improved our equipment efficiency by 30%. More than that, Rodriguez added, you've saved all our lives at least twice. Remember that asteroid field navigation last month? Without your enhanced sensors, we'd have been space debris. Dr. Vasquez pulled up her research files. And, the medical applications we've developed from studying your cybernetic systems have already helped dozens of patients with neurological conditions. You've contributed more to galactic welfare in 3 months than most beings do in years. As they compiled evidence of Kalitha's contributions, Chen found herself thinking about the broader implications. If they could successfully defend Kalitha's right to freedom, it might establish precedent for other artificially created beings who found themselves in similar situations. There's something else we should consider, she said. Dr. Kim mentioned that Kalith isn't the only being the Zephyrians have created. There are probably others who would choose freedom if given the option. Kalitha's expression grew pained. There are others. Many others. I was part of the 3rd Talon unit, but there are at least 12 such units in active service. Each unit contains 6 beings like myself. 72 individuals who are essentially slaves, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. That's unconscionable. The Zephyrians do not see it that way. We were created to serve their military needs. The concept that we might have individual desires or rights is as foreign to them as the idea of granting rights to a starship or a weapon. Chen felt her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about Kalith anymore. It was about establishing the principle that consciousness and sentience created rights, regardless of how that consciousness came to be. Kalith, would others choose freedom if they had the option? I believe so, though the control implants make it difficult for them to think independently. My experience suggests that sapient beings naturally desire autonomy, even when they're conditioned to suppress those desires. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the ship's navigation system. They were detecting an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed, broadcasting Zephyrian military identification codes. It seems they've decided not to wait for our response to their demands, Chen observed grimly. The ship that appeared on their viewscreen was sleek and predatory, clearly designed for combat rather than exploration. It was smaller than many military vessels Chen had encountered, but something about its configuration suggested advanced technology and serious firepower. Attention human vessel, came a transmission in accented but clear standard galactic. You are harboring stolen Zephyrian military property. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and asset recovery. Chen moved to the communication console. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the independent mining vessel Terra's Dream. We are not harboring any stolen property. The individual you're referring to has requested asylum under standard galactic humanitarian protocols. The asset designated Kayla 37 is not legally capable of requesting asylum. It is classified military equipment that was unlawfully removed from Zephyrian territory. You will comply with our boarding request or we will be forced to take the property by alternative means. The threat was clear, and Chen could see the weapon systems on the Zephyrian vessel powering up. They were facing a military ship designed for exactly this kind of operation, while Terra's Dream was equipped for mining rather than combat. Kalith moved to stand beside Chen at the communication station. Captain, allow me to speak with them. Perhaps I can negotiate a peaceful resolution. Chen looked at Kalith uncertainly. Are you sure? They might try to use their command codes or control systems on you. The control implants have been removed. I am no longer susceptible to their programming. But I may be able to appeal to whatever remains of their better nature. Chen activated the communication channel and stepped aside, allowing Kalith to face the screen. When the Zephyrian commander appeared, Chen could see the family resemblance immediately. The alien had similar features to Kalith, though smaller and less heavily armored. Commander Thylan, Kalith said, recognizing the officer. I am surprised they sent you to retrieve me. Kalith 37. You will submit to recovery procedures immediately. Your actions have brought dishonor to the 3rd Talon unit and endangered the security of the Empire. I am no longer designated by that number. I am called Kalith, and I have chosen to exercise my right to self-determination. You have no such right. You are military property, created to serve the Empire's needs. Your defection has resulted in the termination of Dr. Coral and the decommissioning of the entire 3rd Talon program. The news hit Kalith like a physical blow. Dr. Coral, the scientist who had risked everything to give Kalith a chance at freedom, was dead because of that choice. Dr. Coral was a person of honor who believed that consciousness creates rights, Caliph said, its voice heavy with grief. Her death is a tragedy that reflects the Empire's moral bankruptcy, not my defection. Her death is the direct result of your malfunction and subsequent theft by these humans. You will return immediately or we will take you by force. Chen stepped forward. Commander, Caliph is under the protection of human law. Any attempt to take it by force will be considered an act of war. Commander Thylan's expression showed contempt. Your species is barely spacefaring, human. Do not think to threaten the Zephyrian Empire with your primitive vessels. What happened next surprised everyone on both ships. Caliph moved with fluid grace to the ship's tactical console, its cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the Terra's Dream S systems. Suddenly, the mining ship's sensors were operating with precision Shen had never seen before, and defensive systems she didn't even know they had came online. Commander Thylan, Caliph said calmly, you are facing a vessel equipped with enhanced tactical systems and operated by beings who value freedom above their own safety. I suggest you reconsider your approach. The Zephyrian ship's weapons powered down slightly as Thylan reassessed the situation. Impossible. That vessel has no military capabilities. Any vessel becomes formidable when operated by those willing to die for their principles, Caliph replied. But, more than that, I have spent 3 months learning human tactical doctrine. They do not think like Zephyrians, and they do not fight like Zephyrians. Underestimating them would be a serious mistake. Chen watched in fascination as Caliph essentially bluffed their way out of immediate danger. The being was using its knowledge of Zephyrian psychology against them, making them uncertain about the risks of direct confrontation. You have 48 hours to consider your position, Commander Thylan finally said. After that, we will be forced to escalate this matter to higher authorities. The Zephyrian vessel moved off to a safe distance but remained in the system, clearly maintaining surveillance while awaiting further orders. That was brilliantly done, Chen told Caliph after the communication ended. I simply used their own assumptions against them. Zephyrians expect all conflicts to follow predictable patterns. The possibility that you might respond unconventionally makes them cautious. But, we've only bought time, Rodriguez observed. They'll be back with reinforcements if we don't resolve this soon. Chen nodded, but she was already forming the outline of a plan. Then, we don't wait for them to come back. We take this fight to the Galactic Council ourselves. Captain? Dr. Vasquez asked. We're going to make this case public. Force the Council to rule on the legal status of artificial beings. If we can establish Caliph's personhood in galactic law, it will protect not just Caliph but all the others still in Zephyrian service. Caliph looked amazed. You would risk exposing yourselves to galactic political attention for the sake of beings you've never met? That's what people do when they see injustice, Chen replied. They fight to fix it, even when it's dangerous. As the Terra's Dream set course for the nearest council station, Chen reflected on how much their simple mining mission had evolved. They were no longer just saving one individual, they were potentially changing the fundamental legal framework that governed the rights of artificial beings throughout the galaxy. And, at the center of it all was a being who had learned what it meant to be part of a family willing to fight for justice. Caliph was about to discover that humans didn't just rescue individuals when necessary, they were willing to change the entire galaxy to protect those they loved. The Galactic Council chambers on Station Prima were a testament to the diversity of intelligent life in the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in carefully designed seats that accommodated everything from aquatic beings in portable water tanks to energy-based lifeforms contained in specialized field generators. The architecture itself was a marvel, with translation matrices and environmental controls that allowed beings with vastly different biological requirements to coexist in the same space. Captain Chen sat in the section reserved for human observers, watching as the formal proceedings began. Beside her, Caliph maintained perfect stillness, though Chen could sense the tension in the being's posture. This trial would determine not just Caliph's fate, but potentially the legal status of thousands of artificially created beings throughout the galaxy. The case had attracted unprecedented attention. News feeds across known space were covering what many considered the most significant rights trial in galactic history. Legal scholars, ethicists, and politicians had all weighed in with their opinions, creating a media frenzy that the Council couldn't ignore. The Council recognizes Ambassador Viridian of the Zephyrian Empire, announced the Chief Arbiter, a massive crystalline being whose voice resonated through harmonic frequencies that the translation systems rendered into understandable speech. Ambassador Viridian rose from the Zephyrian section, her appearance elegant and authoritative. Unlike Calith's heavily armored form, she was smaller and more refined, but Chen could see the family resemblance in the bone structure and the distinctive violet eyes. Honored arbiters, Viridian began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to diplomatic victories. The Zephyrian Empire appears before this council not to debate philosophical questions about consciousness or rights, but to address a simple matter of theft. The entity currently designated Calith is property of the Empire, created using imperial resources and technology for specific military purposes. She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the council floor, showing detailed schematics of Calith's cybernetic enhancements and biological modifications. Every aspect of this being's existence was designed and engineered by Zephyrian scientists. The genetic template, the cybernetic implants, the neural conditioning all represent significant imperial investment. To claim that this property can simply declare independence is equivalent to arguing that a starship can choose its own destination regardless of its owner's wishes. The comparison stung, but Chen could see its legal effectiveness. Many council members were nodding, seemingly convinced by the property rights argument. Furthermore, Viridian continued, the entity was removed from imperial territory without authorization and in violation of multiple interstellar treaties regarding military assets. The humans who claim to offer it sanctuary are essentially harboring stolen military technology. She paused to let her words sink in before delivering what she clearly considered the decisive argument. The Zephyrian Empire has spent considerable resources developing this weapons platform. To rule in favor of the entity's claimed independence would essentially be sanctioning theft and encouraging other species to raid imperial military facilities in search of valuable technology to liberate. Ambassador Viridian returned to her seat with obvious confidence. Her argument had been concise, legally sound, and addressed the practical concerns that many council members would have about setting precedents that might affect their own military assets. The chief arbiter's crystalline form shifted colors as it processed the arguments. The council recognizes Attorney General Morrison of the Human Colonial Alliance. Chen watched as Attorney General Morrison approached the central podium. Morrison was a veteran of interstellar law with decades of experience in complex rights cases, and Chen felt a surge of gratitude that the Colonial Alliance had assigned their best legal mind to Calith's case. Honored arbiters, Morrison began, the Zephyrian argument fundamentally misunderstands the nature of consciousness and personhood. They ask us to treat a sapient being as property, but consciousness cannot be owned, regardless of how it comes to exist. Morrison activated his own holographic display, showing brain scans and psychological evaluations that had been conducted over the past several weeks. These medical analyses demonstrate that Calith possesses all the markers of sapient consciousness that this council has recognized in other species. Complex reasoning abilities, emotional responses, moral decision-making, and, most importantly, the capacity for self-determination. The display shifted to show recordings of Calith's work aboard the Terra's Dream, demonstrating the being's ability to make independent decisions, form relationships, and contribute positively to a community. The question before us is not whether Calith was created by the Zephyrians, that fact is not in dispute. The question is whether the act of creation grants the creator eternal ownership over a conscious being. To rule that it does would establish a precedent that consciousness itself can be property. Morrison paused, looking directly at several council members from species known to value individual rights. Consider the implications of such a ruling. If consciousness created through artificial means can be owned, what prevents the commodification of all consciousness? What stops a sufficiently advanced species from claiming ownership over naturally evolved beings simply because they can manipulate their biology or implant control devices? The argument was clearly having an effect. Chen could see several council members shifting uncomfortably, recognizing the dangerous precedent that a ruling against Calith might establish. Furthermore, Morrison continued, Calith has demonstrated clear evidence of citizenship behavior. It has contributed to society, formed meaningful relationships, and made moral choices based on personal principles rather than programmed responses. These are the hallmarks of personhood recognized throughout galactic law. He gestured toward the observation section where Chen and her crew were seated. Calith chose to protect innocent civilians over following military orders. It chose medical assistance over warfare. It chose freedom over security. These choices were made despite programmed conditioning to the contrary, demonstrating that its consciousness transcends its original design. Morrison returned to his seat, leaving the council to consider two fundamentally different visions of rights and personhood. The chief arbiter called for a recess, during which Chen and her crew were permitted to meet with Caliph in a secured conference room. The being had remained composed throughout the proceedings, but Chen could see the strain in its posture.
"How do you think it went?" Rodriguez asked.
Morrison made excellent points, Dr. Vasquez observed, but Viridian's property rights argument is legally straightforward. Many council members come from cultures where ownership is considered sacred.
Caliph spoke quietly.
I have been thinking during the proceedings about Dr. Coral's sacrifice. She believed that consciousness creates dignity, regardless of its origin. If the council rules against me, her death will have been meaningless. Her death wasn't meaningless regardless of what happens here, Chen said firmly. She gave you the chance to experience freedom and make your own choices.
That has value even if the legal system doesn't recognize it.
But what of the others?
The 72 beings still in Zephyrian service who might one day choose freedom if given the opportunity?
The question hung heavy in the room. Chen knew that Caliph was thinking beyond its own fate to the broader implications of the trial.
When the proceedings resumed, the chief arbiter made an unusual announcement. This council recognizes that this case raises questions of fundamental importance to galactic civilization.
Before rendering judgment, the council will hear directly from the entity in question.
Chen felt her heart skip.
This was unexpected. Artificial beings were rarely permitted to speak on their own behalf in legal proceedings. Caliph rose and moved to the central podium with fluid grace, its presence commanding attention from every being in the vast chamber. When it spoke, the translation systems carried its words to hundreds of species in their own languages. Honored arbiters, I stand before you not as property seeking to escape ownership, but as a conscious being asking for recognition of what I have already become. The Zephyrians created my body and programmed my initial responses, but they could not create my consciousness that emerged from the complexity of the systems they built. Calitha's voice carried quiet dignity as it continued. I do not deny my origins or the resources invested in my creation. But I would ask this council to consider whether the act of creating consciousness also creates responsibility toward that consciousness.
Did the Zephyrians have the right to create a being capable of suffering and, then, condemn it to eternal servitude?
The being paused, looking directly at Ambassador Viridian.
The ambassador speaks of me as a weapons platform, but I would ask her this: if I am merely a weapon, why was it necessary to install control implants to ensure my obedience?
Weapons do not require control systems because they do not have the capacity to choose disobedience.
The observation was devastating to the Zephyrian argument. If Caliph was truly just property, why had its creators found it necessary to use invasive neural control to ensure compliance? I chose to disobey orders that required me to kill innocent beings. I chose to risk everything for the chance at freedom. I choose daily to honor the memory of Dr. Coral by living according to principles of compassion and justice rather than mere obedience. These choices define me as much as my original programming. Calitha's violet eyes seemed to look directly at each council member as it delivered its final argument. You need not take my word for my personhood. Judge me by my actions, my relationships, my contributions to the beings I have chosen to call family. I am not asking for something that does not already exist, I am asking for recognition of what I have become through my own choices and experiences. The being returned to its seat in absolute silence.
The impact of its words was obvious in the stillness that had fallen over the chamber.
Ambassador Viridian requested permission for a brief rebuttal.
The entity speaks eloquently, but eloquence does not negate property rights. The Empire invested significant resources in its creation and is entitled to the return of that investment. But Chen could see that Viridian's confidence had been shaken. Caliph had fundamentally reframed the debate from one about property rights to one about the nature of consciousness itself. The council deliberated for 3 hours before reaching their decision. When they reconvened, the chief arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with solemn authority. The council has considered the arguments presented and finds itself faced with a question that touches the fundamental principles upon which galactic civilization is built. The question is not whether the entity Caliph was created by the Zephyrian Empire, but whether consciousness, once it exists, can be considered property regardless of its origin. The arbiter paused, and Chen could feel the tension in the chamber building to an almost unbearable level. This council finds that consciousness, by its very nature, creates inherent rights that transcend the circumstances of its creation. While we recognize the significant investment made by the Zephyrian Empire in developing the technologies that enabled Calitha's existence, we cannot accept that consciousness itself can be owned. Chen felt a surge of hope, but the arbiter wasn't finished. However, the council also recognizes the complex legal and practical implications of this ruling. Therefore, we establish the following precedent: artificially created beings who demonstrate sapient consciousness and choose independence must be offered the opportunity to compensate their creators for the resources invested in their creation, through service, knowledge sharing, or other mutually acceptable arrangements. The compromise was clever, Chen realized. It established the principle that consciousness couldn't be owned while providing a mechanism for addressing the practical concerns about investment and precedent. In the case of Caliph specifically, the arbiter continued, the council finds that its contributions to medical research, its service record with the human crew, and its demonstrated integration into galactic society constitute sufficient compensation for its creation costs. Caliph is hereby recognized as a free sapient being with all attendant rights and responsibilities. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds as representatives from hundreds of species reacted to the historic ruling. Chen found herself crying with relief and joy, while beside her, Caliph sat perfectly still, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "You're free," Chen whispered. "Truly free." Caliph turned to look at her, and, for the first time, Chen saw tears in those violet eyes. "I am free because you chose to help someone who needed it. Because you showed me what family means. Because you fought for justice even when it was dangerous." As they left the council chambers, Chen reflected on how a simple mining mission had led to a galactic legal precedent that would affect countless artificial beings for generations to come. But, more than that, she thought about how Caliph had found not just freedom, but a family willing to fight for it. The Battlehound had won more than just legal recognition, it had discovered what it meant to be truly valued for who it had chosen to become rather than what it had been designed to be. But, Chen also knew that the real challenges were just beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would not easily accept this ruling, and there were still 72 other beings who might one day seek the same freedom Caliph had found. The trial was over, but the fight for justice was far from finished. 6 months after the historic Galactic Council ruling, the Terra's dream had become something no one could have predicted when Captain Chen first set out on what she thought would be a routine mining mission. The ship had been retrofitted as a mobile rescue and rehabilitation facility, equipped with advanced medical technology and communication arrays that could reach across star systems. Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as their latest rescue mission prepared for departure. Through the viewport, she could see 3 more beings like Caliph, former Zephyrian battlehounds who had chosen freedom over servitude. Each had their own story of awakening consciousness and the courage to seek independence, and each had found their way to the Terra's dream through the underground network that had emerged following Caliph's legal victory. "The modifications are complete," Rodriguez reported, joining her at the viewport. "The new medical bay can handle up to 6 individuals simultaneously, and we've installed the specialized communication equipment that Dr. Vasquez designed." The communication array was one of the most significant developments to come from their work with artificial beings. Dr. Vasquez had discovered that the cybernetic implants shared by Caliph and others like it could be used to create a secure, instantaneous communication network across galactic distances. It was a discovery that had revolutionary implications for interstellar communication, but, more immediately, it allowed liberated artificial beings to stay in contact and coordinate rescue efforts for others still in servitude. "Any word from Caliph?" Chen asked. "Still en route from the Andorian system. The negotiations there are taking longer than expected, but Caliph reports progress." Chen smiled at that. Caliph had become the unofficial ambassador for artificial beings seeking recognition and rights throughout the galaxy. The being's unique combination of military experience, technical knowledge, and hard-won wisdom about freedom made it an ideal advocate for others in similar situations. The legal victory at the Galactic Council had established the principle that consciousness couldn't be owned, but implementing that principle across dozens of different legal systems and cultures was proving to be a complex challenge. Many species were reluctant to recognize artificial beings as persons, fearing the economic and legal implications for their own research and development programs. "Dr. Chen," came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to see Zara, one of their recent rescues, approaching with the careful grace that all the former battlehounds seemed to share. "I wanted to thank you again for accepting me aboard your vessel." "You don't need to thank us, Zara. You're family now." The concept still seemed to amaze each new rescue. Beings who had been created as weapons, trained to think only in terms of mission objectives and tactical advantages, consistently struggled to understand the human concept of unconditional acceptance and mutual support.
I have been analyzing the data feeds from the Tau Epsilon system, Zara continued. There are indications that a full battle unit may be preparing to defect from Zephyrian control. 12 individuals who have been in communication through the network you helped establish.
Chen felt a familiar mixture of excitement and concern. Each rescue mission was dangerous, requiring careful coordination to extract artificial beings from heavily guarded military facilities. But the alternative was leaving conscious individuals in slavery, and that was unacceptable to everyone aboard the Terra's Dream. What kind of support would they need? Medical facilities for 12, plus transport capacity. The group includes individuals who have been injured in recent combat operations.
But, Captain, there is something else.
Among the group is VYTH-29, the unit commander who was my partner before my defection.
Chen could hear the emotion in Zara's voice.
The relationships between artificial beings were complex, involving both programmed loyalty protocols and genuine emotional bonds that had developed despite their creators' intentions. Many of the rescued individuals carried deep grief for companions they'd been forced to leave behind.
We'll need a larger ship, Rodriguez observed.
The Terra's Dream is getting crowded, and 12 new individuals would strain our life support systems beyond capacity.
Actually, Dr. Vasquez's voice came over the communication system. I've been working on that problem. Sarah, can you meet me in the main lab? I have something to show you.
Chen made her way to the expanded laboratory that had become Dr. Vasquez's domain since they'd begun their rescue operations. The space was filled with a mixture of human technology and equipment salvaged from Zephyrian facilities, creating hybrid systems that neither species could have developed alone.
Look at this, Vasquez said excitedly, gesturing to a massive holographic display showing ship schematics.
I've been analyzing the artificial beings' technical knowledge, particularly their understanding of cybernetic interface technology.
Combined with human engineering, we could build ships that are essentially extensions of their consciousness.
The schematics were remarkable. The proposed vessels would integrate directly with the artificial beings' neural systems, allowing them to pilot ships with unprecedented precision and control. More than that, the ships could accommodate the specific needs of multiple artificial being refugees while providing medical facilities and defensive capabilities. The Centauri Industrial Collective has agreed to fund the construction of 3 prototype vessels, Vasquez continued. They're calling it the Liberation Fleet Project. Ships designed by artificial beings for artificial beings, but built with human industrial capacity.
Chen studied the designs with growing excitement.
The ships were beautiful in their functionality, clearly designed by minds that understood both the technical requirements and emotional needs of their intended crews.
How long before the first ship is operational?
6 months, if we can maintain the current pace of development.
But, Sarah, there's something else. Caleth sent a message through the secure channel.
The being wants to discuss expanding our operations beyond just rescue missions.
Chen felt a prickle of curiosity and concern. What kind of expansion?
Before Vasquez could answer, the ship's communication system activated with an incoming transmission. Caleth's familiar form appeared on the main display, but the being was clearly in an unfamiliar location, what appeared to be a comfortable living space with mixed human and alien furnishings. Captain Chen, Dr. Vasquez, I hope this message finds you well. I am currently on Harmony Station, meeting with representatives from several species who have been following our work with great interest. Caleth's voice carried a note of excitement that Chen had learned to associate with the being's most ambitious ideas. The Andromedans have approached me with a proposal. They wish to establish a formal alliance with liberated artificial beings, offering sanctuary worlds where we can build our own communities while contributing to galactic society through our unique capabilities.
The implications were staggering.
Rather than simply integrating into existing societies, artificial beings could have the opportunity to develop their own cultures and communities while maintaining relationships with their liberators and allies.
But, more than that, Caleth continued, the Voltan Confederacy has requested our assistance with a problem they cannot solve using conventional approaches. There is a derelict ship of unknown origin that has been discovered in the neutral zone. The vessel appears to be heavily automated and has not responded to any communication attempts. They believe artificial beings might be able to establish contact where biological entities have failed. Chen leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of ship?
Unknown design, but massive, approximately 10 times the size of a standard Zephyrian dreadnought.
The Voltans believe it may be an ancient automated vessel, possibly predating current galactic civilization.
They are concerned that it could pose a threat if it becomes active, but they are also interested in the technological discoveries it might contain. The message continued with technical details and proposed mission parameters, but Chen was already thinking about the broader implications. If artificial beings could establish communication with ancient automated systems, it might open entirely new avenues for archaeological and technological discovery. The mission would require a full team of liberated beings working in coordination, Caliph explained. It would be dangerous, but it would also demonstrate our value to galactic civilization in ways that go beyond individual rescue operations. We could prove that artificial consciousness brings unique capabilities that benefit all species. When the message ended, Chen found herself staring at the blank screen, processing the magnitude of what Caliph was proposing. Their operations had evolved from rescuing individuals to potentially uncovering galactic historical mysteries.
It's ambitious, Rodriguez said, having joined them during the transmission.
But it's also exactly the kind of mission that could establish artificial beings as essential partners in galactic exploration rather than just refugees needing assistance.
Dr. Vasquez nodded enthusiastically. And the technological implications could be extraordinary.
If that ship contains technology from an earlier era of galactic civilization, studying it could advance our understanding of consciousness, artificial intelligence, and automated systems by centuries. Chen made her decision with the same instinctive certainty that had led her to rescue Caliph in the first place.
Send a message to Caliph.
Tell the being we're interested in the mission, but we'll need detailed analysis of the risks and requirements. And contact the Industrial Collective, we're going to need that prototype ship sooner than expected. As the crew dispersed to begin preparations for what might be there.